I'm going to be sharing with you in this video how to be consistent even when you don't actually want to be. Because the truth is that there's going to be many times in your life where you really said that you were going to do something and you just don't feel like doing it. You don't feel like following through with that thing that day specifically. And so, if there's going to come a time where you said that you were going to do something and you don't feel like doing it, well, I'm going to be sharing with you in this video how to, move against that, so to speak, and then just continue on course anyway with the promise that you made for yourself. And so the first thing that I want to share with you in this video is to remember that action actually builds momentum. See, so when you feel like, for me personally, it's just what I notice is that when I don't feel like doing something, it requires me to remember that once I start doing something, then the momentum starts to come afterwards. The desire to keep wanting to do something happens once you start doing that thing to begin with. So whereas at first, maybe you didn't even feel like taking action, maybe like you didn't even want to do anything, you didn't even want to start, and you didn't want to even get up, or whatever the case might be, once you just kind of start taking action, it starts to become a situation where you just feel a lot better. You just feel like, okay, this situation is really helping me to feel so much better because you're not focused on thinking anymore. You're just doing, right? People forget that sometimes you can just do without thinking. Doing doesn't actually require thinking. You can just do, and then the thinking comes, because you've already thought about, like if you've already created a plan and you know what you're doing, then the thinking is not required anymore because you've already just entered the stage where you can just be in doing. Just be in doing. There's no need to think anymore. No need to think anymore because you've already thought about it all. You've already thought about the situation that you need to think about. It's already done. So remember that if you don't feel like taking action, simply just taking action can build momentum. And whereas maybe you didn't feel like it at first, you might start to feel like it afterwards. And it might just start to feel a lot better. So this feeling of not feeling like doing it, remember that feeling of not feeling like doing it can remove very quickly out of your experience when you just start doing it. And unfortunately, it might not seem like it, but when you just start doing it, that feeling just goes away. And it's like, it might not seem like it at first, but when you just simply go ahead and just do it, then even though it didn't seem like it at first, then it feels so much better. So much better. So remember in the back of your experience that the momentum comes once you start doing stuff. Even if you didn't want to do it at first, even if you didn't feel like it, that momentum will come afterwards. And so the second thing that I want to share with you in this video is to remember, and I just want to ask you a question, which is that what is your long-term goal? What's your long-term goal with all of this? Because, if you have something that you really want to create in your life, what is your long-term goal? What it is that you really want to create? Because sometimes you're going to have to, you're not going to want to be consistent, right? You're not going to want to keep taking action, but people forget that it's not necessarily that you need to do a sacrifice. You need to think of it as I'm sacrificing one thing for this other thing. But it's like if you want to create something, you have to build momentum that's going to take a consistent sort of action-taking process. And then so you need to remember to allocate the proper resources and the proper attention to then get that result that you're looking for. So for me, if I'm creating something and I don't feel like being consistent, I just like to remember what it is that I want to create in the back of my mind. Just remember that. Don't lose track of what it is that you're creating, of your values, of what's important to you. Because there's absolutely something that's going to be important to you, but you need to remember that in the back of your experience, because if you don't remember this in the back of your experience, you're going to start to forget what you really want to do in your life. You're going to start to, and then when you forget this, you just start becoming like I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like I don't know if a bad word is like a floater. Like you're just doing stuff, but yeah, kind of like a floater. You're just floating through existence, like a flying bag in the wind, and you're just not even focused on intentionally on what it is that you want to do anymore. There's no intention behind what it is that you're creating. And that negativity that you're experiencing, perhaps not you necessarily, but if any person is experiencing any kind of negativity, well then, what they need to remember is that, especially when it comes to action taking specifically, you can remember that why you're doing what it is that you're doing. What's the goal behind why you're doing what you're doing? Why are you even taking action to begin with? Why did you want to take action to begin with? If you forget and lose track of that, well then of course it's going to be very easy to then go do something else, or then forget about it, or then, call up a friend, or have some kind of, do something else that's not relevant to what you want, because you're forgetting to focus on what it is that you want. Excuse me. And I know that sounds so cliche, and it's like, well, that sounds kind of obvious, but you can't lose your focus on the desire and what it is that you want to create. If you don't remember why you're doing what you're doing, and you start to forget your reasoning for why you're doing what you're doing, well, then you can start not taking what you want seriously anymore, and then you'll just start forgetting about it slowly. Slowly forgetting about it. 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks go by. You haven't taken any action on what it is that you truly care about. So remember to continually remind yourself, just not in a harsh way, but a gentle reminder of what you care about and what your values are. What are your values? What do you care about most? Time is not 100% guaranteed, nor is it unlimited. Time is never unlimited. Time is a limited thing, and that might sound cold. That might sound negative to say it, but it's like, the truth is that time is limited, and if you remember in the back of your mind what your long-term goal is, I believe that that's going to help you to then consistently take more action. Not to think about it in some negative way, but it's like just to remember that we can remind ourselves to be in alignment with what we want on a consistent basis, just so that we can be aligned with our desire, just day in, day out, not necessarily putting in 100% intensity 100% of the time, but just being consistent. Which leads me to the final thing that I want to share with you in this video, which is to remember that consistency in the long term versus intensity in the short term is something that we want to start to consider. So what does that really mean for me? Well, that means that, I can be consistent in the long term, and that's going to be very powerful and, very useful to do that. But then at the same time, intensity in the short term is going to be very useful as well. So both of these things can be useful, but remember, in regards to this video specifically, consistency in the long term, I believe is just such a powerful concept. Excuse me. I think it's such a powerful concept because you can really start to be consistent every single day towards what it is that you want, or to the best of your ability, whatever that means to you. If not every single day, just consistently, but every single day. If I think you do something every single day, it's difficult to fail if you do something every single day, in my personal belief system. But consistency nonetheless, regardless of how often it is, just consistently, if it's maybe, when I say it doesn't matter how often, well, it could be every 2 days. It could be every 4 days. It could be even once a week for whatever it is that you're doing. But if it's consistent, and you remember that the consistency in the short term can sometimes be much more powerful in a lot of cases, not 100% of the time, but in many situations, intensity in the short term can be powerful. But if you have a long-term perspective, if you think in the long term, sometimes that long-term perspective and that consistency, being consistent every single day and thinking about the long-term perspective of how you being consistent is going to help you in the long term, how it's going to benefit you in the long term. You being consistent is for the purpose of benefiting yourself long term, is going to be very useful, because now you're starting to get into this space where you're not just taking action mindlessly. You're doing it on purpose, with an intention. You know why you're taking action. You know why you're doing what you're doing. There's no randomness to you taking action anymore, because you absolutely love what it is that you're doing, and your reasoning for taking action is no accident. There's no accidents to why people take action. And I think that people need to remember that even if you're not doing things intentionally, you're still taking action within some kind of reason. There's a reason why you're taking action. Maybe that reason is just not happening on purpose. Remember that. In my personal experience, I think that's one of the most powerful things that I've ever realized in my life, is that even if we don't consciously and intentionally live our life, and we don't know the reason why we're taking action, those reasons that we're generating, because you still have values. We take action towards our values every single day. But even if you don't clarify what those values are, you're still living in alignment with those values, and your actions are still going to be aligned with your values, even if you've not defined those values consciously in your life yet. So I think it is important to take a step back and to define those values so that then you can consciously live in alignment with them every single day to then create what it is that you want. And I know that sounds really weird to say it like that. And it is very simple, but it's so simple that I think that we can often forget the powerful importance of it. So I do encourage you just to get clarification on your values, what it is that's super important to you, what you actually care about, and then do that and then bring it back to consistency, and just try your best to do it on a I would encourage you to do it every single day, just to be honest. But if you can't do that, as much as possible, just try to think more long term in terms of how, I believe I might encourage you to think about how something can, help you long term. What actions can you take to build that thing in the bigger picture, rather than just what can I get tomorrow or the next day or in 2 days? Like, how about your whole life? How about 4 to 6 months or 6 to 12 months or years? I think this is important to remember when it comes to creating what it is that we want. And I think that if we start to think like this is what's going to help us to create what we want in a much more powerful way. And so when you're creating something, I really invite and encourage you once again to just kind of think about, can you really be focused on that bigger picture, that long-term perspective, that thing that you want to create, but it might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen the next day. It might not even happen in 2 months. Are you okay with it not happening for a long time? Whatever you want? Are you really okay with it happening for not a very long time? Because you might see somebody that has something that you want and you might think they got it just like that. But just remember that it might take time. It might take time to develop that thing. And are you okay with doing it every single day, consistently, and not getting a result? Are you at peace with that? I would invite and encourage you to just simply be at peace with that. I don't know how else to put it or how to sugarcoat it in any other way. I know it sounds so simple to say it in this way, but that's just what I invite and encourage you to do, is just to really start to think about how you can build yourself up for that long-term perspective. What actions can you take today that you're going to thank yourself for 5 to 10 years from now, or 20 years from now? Your future, I know that sounds like a long time to think about, but that time's still going to go on. 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, it's still going to go on. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that's still going to happen no matter what. But 10 years from now, you could be a much more powerful and much more successful and much more intelligent version of yourself, or you could be in the exact same position and have not developed yourself whatsoever. And I think that's going to depend on you getting clarification on what those values are, and then taking action on those every single day and thinking about how that's going to create something for you in the long term, not necessarily tomorrow, but long term. And then to remember to be aligned. And those values, don't get me wrong, they might change from moment to moment. They might change in a year's time as well. You might come to a year's time and your values might be totally different. But it's still going to be important for you to fully own those values and to fully step into those values so that then you can create what it is that you want from that space of full intention and then thinking that long term. And so I think that if you apply these concepts, you're going to be able to be much more consistent even when you don't feel like it, because you're going to have more clarification on what it is that you really want to create. And also you're going to be able to take action, and remember that even when you don't feel like taking action, that's going to really help you to sometimes just feel better when it comes to taking action, and you're going to feel better after you start to do more stuff in the world. Just remember that when you have that clarification on what it is that you want to create in the long term, that's what's going to help you to be consistent when you don't really want to be consistent, to be consistent when you don't feel like it, and to do what it is that you really want to do in your life and to create what you want as a result of it. And then so I hope that these concepts really help you to create what it is that you want and to be consistent even when those negative experiences are coming, or negative emotions, are coming up, and not allowing you to fully step into that version of yourself that you prefer to be. And so with that, I conclude this